Manx Radio's Update with Beth Espy.
Well, first, good evening. Welcome to Update here on Manx Radio FM. Hands up if you're glad it's Friday. Well, it has been quite the week for Manx Care. We're going to take you through the story as it's developed over the past few days. We'll hear the interviews we've had with the Manx Care CEO Teresa Cope, the Chief Minister Alfred Cannon, and we've also heard today from the Health Minister Claire Christian. There is a lot to digest, so do stay tuned for that. Also tonight, we'll be talking rates. Has your areas been announced yet? And later, we'll hear about a fundraising campaign for the Isle of Man athletics team ahead of the Island Games in Orkney. We'll also keep an eye on the traffic and travel as well. And as ever, if you'd like to get in touch, you can text 166 177. We'll start with a news roundup with Chanel Fastamai.
The Health Minister says she's incredibly sorry for the miscommunication surrounding a leaked document that outlined a series of cuts Manx Care had planned to implement. Despite telling Tynwald that no services are under threat while being aware of the proposed cuts, Claire Christian maintains that she did not break the government code.
Just so we can categorically clear it up, do you deny that you misled Parliament then?
I did not mislead Parliament.
Meanwhile, the Chief Minister says he won't be asking the Health and Social Care Minister to resign from her post. Manx Care has confirmed that it's reducing service delivery in a bid to save money. In an earlier interview, Chief Executive Officer Teresa Cope was asked whether the minister would have, in fact, been aware.
Do you agree that she was not aware of any cuts, or was she briefed on the cuts?
I think the plans weren't finalised.
Moving on, 2 yellow weather warnings are in place for today and tomorrow. The first for ice and frost kicks in at 7 p.m. until 3 p.m. tomorrow. The second for coastal overtopping is from 11:30 tomorrow until 3 o'clock on Sunday morning. In international news, the mother of a newly released Israeli hostage claims her daughter was held in facilities belonging to the United Nations Relief and Works Agency. Emily Damari was kidnapped during the October the 7th attacks and says she was denied access to medical treatment. It's emerged one person was left to handle air traffic in Washington on the night a plane and a helicopter collided, killing 67 people. NBC News has confirmed a controller was allowed to leave work early. And Prince Andrew is understood to have been in contact with child sex offender Jeffrey Epstein for longer than he claimed. He's believed to have responded to an email 2 months after he said he cut contact with him, according to new court documents. Those are your headlines. News at 6.
Manx Glass and Glazing can supply and install single, double and triple glazing. Call 674 573 or visit the showroom on the Snugborough Trading Estate.
Thank you very much indeed, Chanel. Well, the weather brought to you by Manx Glass and Glazing. As Chanel mentioned, there are those 2 weather warnings. One coming into force at 7 until 3 tomorrow morning. That's for frost and ice. And then the other one is for coastal overtopping from 11:30 tomorrow morning until 3 a.m. on Sunday morning. It's the usual areas to be affected: Shore Road and Russian, Castletown Promenade and Central and Northern Douglas Promenade. The general forecast then: dry, clear spells this evening and at first tonight. Patchy frost developing in prone locations because temperatures will be around 0. Cloud then increasing overnight as the southerly wind freshens, allowing temperatures to rise. And tomorrow, dry and bright intervals to start with. Cloud thickening with a risk of a few spots of rain or drizzle later in the day and fresh to strong southerly winds. Top temperatures tomorrow will be around 8 Celsius. Sunset this evening was at 4:57. Sunrise tomorrow morning, 6 minutes past 8.
Simply income protection from Kestrel Insurance. A choice of benefits. Simple underwriting and peace of mind with a regular income for up to 2 years if you're unable to work due to illness or injury. Kestrel Insurance is registered with the Isle of Man Financial Services Authority.
Carpetland, the carpet specialist with the island's best value carpets in stock, often fitted within a week. Furnitureland, for 3-piece suites, dining and living room furniture, and a selection of amazing beds. Carpetland and Furnitureland, West Street, Ramsey.
Making life easier with Manx Mobility at the top of Summer Hill. Are you looking for a stair lift? Look no further with Which Magazine's #1 recommended stair lifts, now provided by Manx Mobility. Access BDD stair lifts. Call us today on 200 680. The exclusive Karcher store is open with thousands of products, accessories and parts in stock. For Karcher sales and service, Hersham Electrical, Shipyard Industrial Estate, Ramsey.
It's just gone 5:05 here on Update. OK, let's get to grips with this Manx Care story this week then. There has been outcry from MHKs and the public alike after Manx Care's plans to cut services were only revealed via speculation and an embargoed press release leaked by the Ramsey MHK Laurie Hooper. He is, of course, the former health minister. Further funding has now been secured from Treasury, which the healthcare provider says means planned actions can now be reduced. Those cuts that are still going ahead include a temporary reduction to elective care for the remainder of the financial year. So for patients receiving treatment off island, this means a pause to non-urgent procedures in Liverpool and Manchester until the end of March. On island, the additional funding will enable many appointments to go ahead over the next 2 months, while those who do have their appointments disrupted will have them rearranged as early as possible from April. So the timeline of this week's events has been fairly unclear, particularly in relation to who knew what and when. It's something Manx Care CEO Teresa Cope has been talking to Siobhan Fletcher about.
So we hadn't, at that point, got all of the necessary approvals and sign-off outside of Manx Care.
So why was it sent to the press then?
Because we had done our element of planning. We were ready to go, the Manx Care board. In order to be able to implement this from the 1st of February, we needed to act quite quickly, and ideally we would have wanted to have informed everybody of these plans at that point. You know, it has taken longer than I think that we would all like, and I think in the meantime, because the planning has still had to continue as though we were starting next week, there has been a crossover, and I think that has meant the public hasn't had the information it has needed in a timely way.
Is Manx Care arm's length or not?
We are arm's length. It is really important that the board is able to make the appropriate decisions, taking into account quality, safety, our financial responsibilities. But equally, we are a small island, and our staff, our patients are all constituents, and this is where ultimately Manx Care would want to make sure that the decisions it makes do take account of stakeholder views, political views, and we all work together for the best interests of the island's populations.
The health minister gets up in Tynwald last week and says,
as far as I'm aware, no services are under threat.
Do you agree that she was not aware of any cuts, or was she briefed on the cuts?
I think the plans weren't finalised.
So she knew of some cuts though?
We always share the plans. The ability for those plans to be agreed and signed off was yet to be absolutely nailed.
So that's the CEO of Manx Care, Teresa Cope, talking to Siobhan there. Following that, the Chief Minister said there clearly needed to be a rethink on how government policies and their impacts were communicated to the Manx public. Let's hear what happened now when Siobhan spoke with the Chief Minister, Alfred Cannon.
It's been nothing to do with flip-flopping. The fact that this has now come out is because Laurie Hooper decided to pick up a 2-week-old press release and bring it forward because he wanted to undermine and destabilise the new minister.
But equally here, Chief Minister, and I'm not jumping in to defend Laurie Hooper in any way, but we've heard from several politicians and the average Joe on the street who doesn't know what's happening, and they're turning to their politicians and then their politicians don't know. It just seems sort of madness then that it does take things like an outdated press release to be dropped on the internet by an MHK for this to all be sort of brought out into the open.
Well, there would have been a statement on Tuesday, but the minister was ill. That statement has been rolled forward. And look, I guess in all these situations, there's always a need for proper communications. And clearly the minister has been dealing with it with a huge amount. You know, I will be picking up in terms of how things are being communicated out to the public, but it's not always entirely clear. And we're also, running the risk we're going to try and micromanage every single aspect of what is happening operationally within Manx Care, within the NHS.
Why could a member of her department not get up and give a statement just to say things are ongoing? Why could yourself not do that? Because that's not out of the ordinary that a member speaks for the minister.
Claire fell ill literally that morning. 2 minutes to 10 had decided that she was not fit enough to go into the House of Keys. My understanding of the situation was that was put to the mover of the question and agreed that actually the minister should give the statement.
Claire Christian, as the Health Minister, stood up in Tynwald last week and said that there were no planned cuts. I mean, the ministerial code states that ministers have the duty to provide Tynwald and the public with full and accurate information and must not mislead them. You've alluded to there that Manx Care and the Health Minister knew about these planned cuts, at least that they were on the table. Has she breached that code? And if so, would you be asking for her resignation?
I'm certainly not making or about to start speaking for and behalf of the minister. I think you need to put that question to her. I don't think if people feel they've been misled, that was her intention at all.
That is the Chief Minister, Alfred Cannon, talking to Siobhan. I should say you can listen to those interviews in full as newscasts at manxradio.com. I think saying it's been quite the week for Manx Health Service is probably an understatement. News editor Tessa Hawley joins me in the studio now. And Tessa, this is a story that has been, it's been developing for some time.
Yes, it certainly has been. And I know it's been a bit of a whirlwind week for the public, for the politicians and for us in the Manx Radio newsroom. Actually, it's probably fair to say it's been quite the month because this all started with that media release. So just to recap, on the 15th of January, the Manx media was sent an embargoed press release from Manx Care. Now that was due to be issued publicly the following day. And what it did was outline a series of cuts that the health body was planning to take in order to save money. But it was pulled later that day because we were told those measures were being considered again. Now, fast forward to the January sitting of Tynwald on the 21st of January, and the Health and Social Care Minister told Tynwald in a discussion about industrial action and doctors' pay that as far as she was aware, no health services on the island were under threat.
Now, 2 days after that comment, Douglas East MHK Joni Farragher got permission to table an urgent question in the House of Keys about planned cuts and asking for the minister to make a statement. But as we know, that didn't happen.
It didn't. So if we roll back to Tuesday this week, the House of Keys was told that Claire Christian was unwell and would not be able to answer the question. What also happened on that day was our listeners started contacting us to tell us that they were already experiencing issues in accessing healthcare services, particularly off-island, in relation to appointments and operations. And those issues that we were hearing about were in line with the cost-saving measures that had been outlined to us in that embargoed media release, which never saw the light of day. Now, on Tuesday, we also saw some backbench MHKs, in particular Laurie Hooper and Joni Farragher, sharing their concerns on social media.
OK, let's move to Wednesday of this week then. And I think that's really where it started to unravel, yeah?
Yes, so we were told that Ms Farragher had opted to roll her House of Keys question to the following sitting instead. That will be next Tuesday. And we also had the chance to speak directly to Mr Hooper. Now, he told us he believed Alfred Cannon's administration was essentially holding a gun to the head of the Manx people by sanctioning the rumoured health cuts. Following that interview, we went to the DHSC and Manx Care inviting them to respond, and we heard nothing back. Later that evening, the situation took another turn when Mr Hooper leaked a version of that embargoed media release that he'd been provided with online. And it was at this point that other backbench MHKs also started piping up over the issue.
OK, so now we're on Thursday, yesterday. By this point, we'd heard from backbench MHKs and patients directly impacted by the changes. Had we heard then from anyone within Manx Care or the DHSC?
Not by yesterday morning. And for that, for us, it's one of the biggest frustrations. We'd been asking repeatedly for Manx Care and the department to provide some clarity and end some of this speculation which we'd seen. Now, finally, yesterday afternoon, we did have the opportunity to sit down with the Chief Exec of Manx Care, and we also got to speak to the Chief Minister, both of whom you've just heard from. Now, Manx Care also yesterday did finally release a media release outlining the actions that they were taking, and that did include stopping the non-urgent treatment at UK hospitals. And it is important to say that the media release issued yesterday was different to the original version that we'd been provided with. And the changes, we were told, were possible because of an £800,000 cash injection from the Treasury, which is allowing things like on-island surgery to continue. And that had previously been at risk.
And what about the Health Minister?
Today, Friday, we finally, after multiple requests, also got the opportunity to sit down with the Health and Social Care Minister, Claire Christian. And this is what she had to say.
So in Tynwald on the 21st of January, the Honourable Member Julie Edge asked if I would make a statement about the possibility of strike action by doctors. And I was pleased to announce that in Tynwald that the latest pay offer of the doctors was being considered formally by the BMA, which resulted in the strike action being deferred. There were obviously supplementary questions asking whether doctors' pay offer would directly lead to threats and cuts in services or extra budget being required by Manx Care. And in response to these questions, I advised it was not. There is obviously, in terms of the timing of this, prior to that, a week earlier, Manx Care had issued a press statement, which I saw at that point when it had been issued. And the department and I requested that, as it was embargoed, that be reviewed. I was putting my case and the department case or certainly from my perspective and the department members, that I felt that the on-island elective should continue.
So you said that you were aware of the press release, which was embargoed, which means you were aware of those cuts. So was it disingenuous to say in Tynwald that you weren't aware of any services that were under threat?
So I was answering in relationship to the Doctors' Pay Awards.
OK, just so we can categorically clear it up, do you deny that you misled Parliament then?
I did not mislead Parliament.
We asked the Chief Minister if he was going to be asking for your resignation. He said that we need to put that question to you. So do you feel it's your responsibility to resign after what's being described as chaos?
So the Chief Minister has not asked for my resignation. I have been working extremely hard to keep and maintain the elective surgery on island, those procedures to continue. I feel that had I not been in this position, I feel that I have worked extremely hard to achieve that. I am incredibly sorry that there has been miscommunication, and there's definitely, we definitely need to review how this is done in the future.
That is the Health Minister, Claire Christian, talking to our Christian a little bit earlier today. Again, you can hear the full interview as a podcast at manxradio.com in the newscast section. Much more on this in perspective this Sunday with Phil from 12. He's speaking to Claire Christian and Laurie Hooper as well. Definitely don't miss that one. 17 minutes past 5.
Manx Radio Travel, driven by Quayside Tyres and Service Centre.
Well, nothing on the police pages, so fingers crossed it's all okay for your drive home tonight. Looking good down at the airport, and the latest from the steam packet. The Manxman is due back into Douglas at around about 5:30, and we'll be heading out for Heysham again at 7:15.
Ask how you can spread the cost interest-free at Quayside.
It is 18 minutes past 5, and the leader of Douglas Council says the new budget will make the local authority more efficient and support frontline staff. Now, a new rate of 602 pence in the pound was set for the next financial year. That's a 29 pence rise on last year. Councillor Claire Wells says the rate is at a realistic level and provides value for money to ratepayers.
Okay, so there's a number of factors. I think the biggest factor is our staffing costs as we continue to work towards single status. And we've also got some increase in staff with regards to our frontline services in order to keep those services running effectively and also to improve some of the services that we provide. We found over the years that finding contractors to do some of the work, which has been the council's policy for some time, just isn't working. We would go out to tender and we'd either not get any tenders, or if we got a tender in and we accepted it, they would just never turn up to do the work that we needed. So we are in a position now where we need to start increasing our workforce to ensure that our really high standards of service are kept at that high standard.
What factors led to the decision? I know in the meeting that you mentioned you've got some projects coming up as well that need paying for. So what kinds of things have you budgeted for essentially with the new rate increase?
Okay, so as I say, we've budgeted for some frontline staff members. We've also budgeted for the changes to the promenade gardens. We've got some, a lot of money going in there because we think that it's really important for the community to ensure that that facility is both returned and also improved. So, we're not just replacing what was there before, we're also improving the facility and also improving some of the other gardens in line with that. It's really important for us to provide community facilities, and that's part of it. The vast majority of our capital programme is really in housing as we continue to invest in in our housing facilities and provide houses for those in housing need.
That is Councillor Claire Wells, who was talking to Emma Draper, our local democracy reporter there. And Emma is with me now. Emma's been covering the local authority rate announcements these past few weeks. So, Emma, we've just heard from Douglas Council there and how they've managed their budget and rate setting. We've heard from a number of other people today. Who are they?
Yeah, so they had their special rate meeting today and went through their budget and rates, which are now set at 602 pence in the pound. We have had quite a lot come through today, so bear with me. Also in the East, we've had Braddon commissioners who came under heavy criticism last year for increasing their rates by 30%. Now this year it's gone up minimally by 6 pence and will now be set at 357 pence in the pound. But the refuse rate will be going up to £92 for the year from £50. We'll jump to the South with Port St Mary commissioners who have increased their rates to 419 pence in the pound, which is a 5% increase. The local authority cited maintenance of infrastructure, rising operational costs and investing in public services such as waste management as reasons for the hike. Arbury and Rushing commissioners have confirmed their rates will be going up too, to 183 pence in the pound, with an allowance in anticipation of costs associated with responding to Manx Utilities wind farm proposals planning application. And Maloo commissioners' rates will be staying at 199 pence in the pound for the fourth year in a row. The authority says it's due to new developments being built and the rates income from those and some budgeting.
OK, have we heard anything from out west?
Yes, only one has announced today, Patrick Commissioners, which is raising its rates to 248 pence in the pound, which is a 6 pence increase on last year. In its statement, it says the energy from waste plant and substantial increases to the Western Civic Community site were considered when making the decision. Up north or down north in Ramsey, the commissioners have announced a 15 pence increase on their rates, which are now set at 510 pence in the pound. Residents living in a 3-bed house in the town will pay 38p more a week than they were last year.
OK, Emma, and if people, like me, really don't understand the ins and outs of rate setting and what they actually mean, where can they find some help?
It is quite a confusing topic and it is completely understandable if you have questions. So the best option is to contact your local authority and they will be able to help you with your rates bill and explain any processes you need to follow. Most local authorities have Treasury collect their rates on their behalf, apart from Braddon, Onken and Douglas. So it's always best to check with your representatives directly. We at Manx Radio also have a very helpful video on rates, which has Martin, one of the clerks from Garth Commissioners, explaining everything you need to know about how they work.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Emma. That video is on all the rate stories that have been published so far. And if your local authority hasn't been mentioned yet, keep an eye on the Manx Radio website as it may be published in the coming days. Emma, thank you. 22 and a half minutes past 5. A fundraising campaign has been launched looking to generate £10,000 to help the Isle of Man athletics team make this year's Island Games in Orkney in July. Petra Aitchison, Isle of Man athletics team manager, explains how much this event means to local athletes to take part in.
A lot of their athletes, they dream of this moment. It is a stepping stone to higher competition, but the Island Games always draws in so many talented athletes, which we have in abundance. So selection is going to be hard this year, but looking forward to it. They are already doing indoor competitions. We have got 4 competitions in April, just before selection, which is on the 25th of April.
Athletics covers many, many disciplines, and therefore athletics teams tend to be, in particular the Island Games and for the Isle of Man, are larger than a lot of the other squads that are going to be there. So just how big a challenge is it for everyone to make sure that the funds are raised to make sure they can get there and that they can compete?
Yes, I mean, we did have the option to downsize the team, but at the end of the day, we shouldn't have to, and we should be taking our top athletes and giving them every opportunity possible, which we will strive to do. We did it for Guernsey, and I'm sure we will make it for Orkney. We had so many development athletes in the last games, purely because we had the gap with the COVID, and they have actually shone since then as well. We have a couple of development athletes that have put their forms forward for selection for Orkney, which is great, and they are up there with the top athletes that we already have, which is why I say selection is going to be quite tricky this time around. But no, we've changed the way of selection just slightly. Just hopefully will make it easier for us as selectors, make it more easier for the athletes to understand what they have to achieve. All fundraising is purely for the athletes. so that they have nothing to worry about when they get to the games except compete and achieve.
That is Petra, who's the Isle of Man Athletics team manager, talking about that fundraising campaign. You can find out more at manxradio.com. We're going to stay with the sports theme now, and we're joined by Darren. Lots happening today, Darren.
Yeah, good evening. Starting with football, Canada Life Premier League leaders Peel will be looking to get back to winning ways after being stunned by Corinthians last weekend. They'll face Union Mills while the Bella Fletcher side take a rest week. Champions Ayr United have played 2 games less than their Douglas rival, and a win over Rushen will see them close the gap to 3 points on second place. In Arden and Druggan Limited Division 2, top 2 Braddon and Douglas Old Boys also take a rest this weekend, which means third place Rycob could go level on points with second if they beat Douglas Royal, though Old Boys do have 2 games in hand on Rycob. On to rugby, and both Vagabonds and Douglas Rugby Club will be looking to build on their wins from last weekend. Vaggers, however, will face a hard test this weekend in the Counties 3 ADM Lancashire and Cheshire as they face 4th place Clitheroe at Balla Fletcher. The away side dominated the reverse fixture early in the season as they won 88-5. Douglas, meanwhile, will play 5th place Burnage in the Regional 2 Northwest at Portachi. The last time these two sides met, Burnage won by 15 points, but Douglas will be expecting better performance this time round to build on their win over Winnington Park. Elsewhere, Ramsey host Western Vikings in the Manx Shield. And in hockey, the top 2 Ladies Premier League go head-to-head as Castletown A will play Valkyries A. The Men's Premier League top 2 will also face each other as Backers A play Vikings A. Backers have started the season strong as they have a plus 18 goal difference after 2 games. Elsewhere, Valkyries B will look to get revenge on Castletown A after being knocked out of the cup by the South Eastern side last Saturday. And in the Ladies Division 1, unbeaten sides Castletown B will face Valkyries B.
Thank you very much indeed, Darren. Well, that is pretty much all from Update this evening. As I say, much more detail about all this week's top stories at manxradio.com. All the newscasts are there. Sometimes you do need to listen to the interviews in full. Congratulations to Manx Radio and the lady reporter on her determination when interviewing the Chief Minister and Health Minister. Well done, that girl, says Jewin715. Well, I think it's fair to say we know that you've had questions about all of these issues we've been talking about this week, so it's important that we are able to put them to the people in charge. Coming up next on Manx Radio, it's the Friday Sport Preview with Simon Quine again this week. Then Chris Kinley has Greatest Hits from 6:30. The Kane Brothers will be here with Jumping In from 9. And then Nick Holt has had her curtains cut especially for the 90s playlist. That's on from 10. Whatever you're doing this weekend, have a great one. Do stay tuned to Manx Radio on our social media pages and on air as well for the very latest news. And Update will be back with you from 5 on Monday.